Okay. Well, welcome. I want to welcome everybody to the Foundation for Conscious Living's Big Leap Home community. So excited to have you here with us, and especially this very special night of having Gay Hendricks here to share an incredible topic with us. And so I'm just going to go over a few logistics, but I want to give Gay as much time as I can here. So my name is Michelle Yasuda, and I'm the program director for the Big Leap Home online programs. And these programs support individuals, organizations, and communities in generating agency, connection, and creativity on our shared planet. And this call that you're on tonight is one of the ways that we express that vision and that mission. So tonight, if you have questions during the call, I'm just going to mute a couple people. I hear a little noise here. I'll just ask you to mute. So during the call, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and I'll be checking that and flagging those for Gay. There'll be a few times during the call where we'll have a question time. So you can also raise your hand for those during those times. And if you have a question, please put 3 question marks in front of your comment, because sometimes people are putting comments in there and I might not be able to see them. So that'll be helpful. And I'm also going to put an invitation to our online community that you can join if you haven't joined us on that. So I'll put that in the chat so you can look for it there. And so I would love to turn the call over to you, Gay. And I always appreciate our facilitators before I turn the call over. And tonight I want to appreciate you for giving me the gift of learning how to breathe, relearning how to breathe, remembering how to breathe. And I know that everything that's happened in my life since that moment when I began to learn the yes breath and learn how to breathe fully has been affected by that one choice that I made to practice what I learned from you. So thank you so much, and go ahead and turn the call over to you.
Well, thank you so much. That's the best thing you can say to a guy like me. Thank you so much. I mean, yeah, I always say I have the best inbox in the world especially because of writing The Big Leap and the Genius Zone. Lots of entrepreneurs and people send me email every day telling me the big leap they've taken. And so I get to live on a steady diet of miracles. So I hereby empower all of you that are within earshot or eyeshot of this to take it and breathe with it and be with it and use it to create your own life of constant miracles. I've used what we're talking about tonight to create everything in my own life. And to date, all of my dreams have come true. I may come up with some others later, but right now, all of my dreams are either have come true or are busily coming true. Some of them are things that are happening every day of my life. But so I know it works. I know what we're talking about works. And so your job, though, will be just to kind of digest what you would like to take in from it. And I would recommend also to coming back and watching the recording of this, because it's very rich, deep material that I've had its wisdom steeping in me for more than half my life now. So there's a lot of richness to it. I like to teach manifestation in 3 levels. It's always nice in human life when things can break into 3s because of the way the human brain is organized, with our magnificent reptilian system underneath keeping us warm and breathing and that kind of thing. And then the limbic system running our emotions and making us open to cuddling and being with other people in a emotional kind of way. And then we've got the cortex on top of everything. This last little, if you look at a grapefruit, the size of the cortex is the size of the rind of the grapefruit. and the limbic system is the size of the juicy part. So human beings have only recently come into the whole thinking part of life. And then over the last 50,000 years of evolution, we've really developed our software so that we can use our mental operations to plan and to actually do things that will make your life come true as you have visualized it and designed it. So we're in a very precious state of evolution now. In fact, William James, who was kind of the biggest psychologist of the 19th century, he was a Harvard psychologist, kind of one of those people that were at the very top of the wisdom chain in that time of the 19th century. He said that the greatest discovery of his time was that you could change the outer circumstances of your life by changing the inner ecology of your thought. Think of that. That whole century, the telephone was invented and the car was invented and locomotives ran across the country for the first time. And here was this guy saying, that was great, but all of it pales in comparison to this one amazing skill. And so that's where we begin. I call the first level of manifestation the Newtonian level. And I admire the heck out of Sir Isaac Newton. If you want to read about a fascinating guy, go back and check out what Sir Isaac was up to. Just one quick Sir Isaac anecdote. He was busy staring at the sun one day, trying to figure out some things, and he went blind. And so what did he do about that? There was no doctoring in his time. That was 500 years ago. So he theorized, well, I got my problem from staring at the sun. Let me sit in the dark. And so he sat in the pitch dark for 3 weeks, having his food brought in, slid under the door and that kind of thing. So he just did nothing but darkness for 3 solid weeks. And his vision came back fine. So don't do that, by the way. Sir Isaac Newton said many wonderful things, but one thing that just caught my attention was his thing that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And I realized that he was not just talking about physical things. I think his example was a billiard ball hitting another billiard ball. So, but think of it as an inner thing, that the kind of thought you think and the quality of thought you think then has an effect on the outer circumstances of your life. That's what William James was saying, and that's what I'm calling the Newtonian level. For every action, like a thought, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Equal and opposite, not meaning backwards to it, but just caused by on the outside world. So that's why I call that Newtonian. And in that batch of manifestation techniques are things like affirmations. I'm sure most of you have tried those out or worked with affirmations. That was my old friend, the late Louise Hayes' great contribution. She got a whole bunch of people excited about doing affirmations. And it's really a good thing to do, because what you're doing with an affirmation is creating a new positive thought over and over again and retraining your mind. Instead of saying, why is the world doing it to me? Suddenly creating a new type of thinking, which is, oh, I'm going to do positive things toward the world. So that solves a big problem in human life, which is the tendency to go around thinking doomsday thoughts about ourselves, our neighbors, our family members, the world in general, and creating a world of unhappiness for ourselves due to its beginnings in our thought world. also in that whole basket of Newtonian techniques is all the materials in the law of attraction, the stuff you saw in the book, the Secret, and the movie, The Secret, was all about that idea of the law of attraction creating life vibrationally, in a sense, by creating an interior sense of what you wanted to create and a set of thoughts about what you wanted to create, and letting those do your manifestation. So it's a very powerful thing. And certainly a lot of people apparently had never heard of that before The Secret, because it became wildly popular. And although the idea itself has been around way back into the 19th century in the Western world, there was a whole phenomenon in the 1800s of self-help books started coming out, and seminars and new thought ways of thinking, theosophy, and other types of kind of positive spins on Christianity, sort of Christianity without the guilt and suffering, more of a positive version of Christianity. So that became really popular back in the 19th century, and a whole lot of people started thinking about that. New churches began, and to this day, that movement, which now largely is called, I believe, the New Thought movement, you can read whole history books on how it's come up from the 19th century to the current world through the unity churches and divine science and Church of Religious Science, and all the work now that's kind of manifested out of the so-called New Age set of tools and techniques that we've all been exposed to and are part of that zeitgeist that's happened over the past 30 or 40 years. So some historians call it the Third Great Awakening. This new, over the past 30 or 40 years, this new interest in meditation and visualization and affirmations and things of that nature. By the way, my other passionate subject is breathing, most of you know, and I want to encourage you to take some nice, big, easy breaths as we go along, because my task tonight is to assemble a whole lifetime of learnings about a subject into a little under an hour and leave some time for questions. So that's my big goal that I'm working off of tonight. Everything you need to know about manifestation in 55 minutes. So the Newtonian is anytime you create a positive new thought or visualization or set of words that summarize something that you want to have happen in the future. Okay, so it works for all sorts of things. You might say to yourself, I enjoy public speaking. Let's say you've been scared of public speaking. You might work with those kinds of positive affirmations, or you might picture yourself in a situation of visualization of people enjoying your speaking ability. Our dear friend Bonnie Raitt, the musician, had her first big Grammy win after going through a visualization process of actually seeing herself receiving the Grammy, and even the dress she was wearing when she was on stage. And so she worked with that for a year or so, and then poof, you know, her album Nick of Time won a number of Grammys and kind of turned her from being a club musician, which she'd been doing for many years, to being a stadium musician. And I never get to see her anymore because she moved up to Northern California. She's also one of the wittiest people you would ever want to meet, just an absolute majestic human being at all levels. So I want to give you a personal example of these techniques I'm talking about. When Katie and I first got together, we were really in a bottomed out place financially because I had taken a sabbatical for the first time in my life. I took a year off, and I traveled and did a whole bunch of things I'd always wanted to do, but never had time or money enough to do. And by then I'd written a couple of books and things, so I had plenty of money. So I took a year off and just traveled around the world, and in the process of doing met Katie. And so that everything changed in my life that year. And one of the things that happened after Katie and I got together, she had $300 savings, and her Mustang, her old Mustang, which was kind of on its last legs. And I had just had my credit card repossessed because I'd been over in Europe and I didn't make the payments. And so I came back and I think I had $1,500 left or something, thankfully in cash, because all my credit cards had been pinched and I had to go through a long process of getting those underway again. But anyway, what I'm getting at is we were both kind of at the low end of the bridge when we got together. And so we had nowhere up to go but up. And one magic day, something happened for us that really changed our financial lives. We'd been living together. We weren't yet married, but we'd been living together for about 6 or 8 months, I think. And I was just learning aspects of Katie's personality. You know, we say now that a relationship is usually made up of a sharp pencil and a happy idiot. Well, I came in happy idiot to the extreme. I always figured I could make plenty of money doing whatever I did. And I had never balanced my checkbook and had never had a budget. And I didn't even, I got somebody to pay my bills for me and everything. And I didn't have much interaction with the material world. And so when Katie and I got together, we were in a different financial circumstance due to those factors that I just mentioned, Europe and everything. And so we got in quite a bit of friction in the first months of our relationship about not having money and what are we going to do and everything like that. And on this one day, it was a cold winter day in Colorado, and I was riding on my exercise bike, which I did every day in the winter. And I was cranking along and I had this set of thoughts, and it was, I hope we have enough money to make it through to the end of the month. And as I was pedaling along, maybe it was because of the oxygen and I was kind of high and everything, suddenly I realized, wait a minute, that's exactly the same conversation I heard going on around me as a kid. It was always, are we going to make it through the month? And I had this moment of realization, wow, was I importing the poverty consciousness from 40 years ago or 35 years ago, that's about how old I was at the time, 35 years ago, onto my present circumstance by just continuing that conversation in my head? I mean, the alarm bells went off like crazy. And I realized, my goodness, maybe I could change the conversation in my head and create something brand new. I mean, amazingly enough, that's the first time I had that thought, that, oh, I could create something brand new. And at the time, I hadn't really heard much of anything about new thought or affirmations or anything like that. It just wasn't part of my worldview at the time. So, but lo and behold, there I discovered new thought psychology right there on my exercise bike, or rediscovered it. And I went into Katie, and as luck would have it, she was kind of bent over the checkbook. Now, Katie's the sharp pencil, and she was balancing the checkbook while I was in there, the happy idiot, on the exercise machine. And so, and her body was kind of crimped up, and I could see that she was not having much fun doing it. And I said, hey, I got to talk to you. You won't believe what just happened to me. And so I explained it to her, what had just happened. And I basically said, let's recreate the whole conversation. Whatever you heard as a kid, whatever I've heard, let's forget that and just figure out how we want it to be. Wow, that was the big life changer. Because what happened, we she put away the checkbook and we went off to have some dinner. And interestingly enough, we always joke about this. The only health food restaurant in Colorado Springs at the time was called Poor Richard's. And so we went to do our money manifestation, abundance manifestation over a big Caesar salad at Poor Richard's. Okay, so how ironic is that? We didn't realize what a joke that was till later. So we sat down and we figured out that we didn't want to spend a lot of time thinking about money. We wanted to put our attention into what we came to call our particular genius. And neither one of us are a genius with, managing money or anything like that. And we don't have any reason to expect that we would be good at that. So we decided to focus on the stuff we were genius at and get somebody else to help us do the rest. But we made up the broad guideline, and the broad guidelines were basically only 2 or 3 things. One of them was, we said, we always want plenty of money to do everything we want to do. And then we took the we took a word, we started out with, we always have enough money to do what we want to do. And then we couldn't get a resonance and then we saw, oh, enough. That's just enough, and so we changed it to plenty. We came up with eventually something like, we enjoy plenty of money to do all the things we want to do. Then we did another thing. We said, okay, this is really bold. Wouldn't it be great if we had $1,000 in an account somewhere that we never touched, and just added to that? And it was such a ridiculous idea that it seemed alien at the time, but we thought, why not? We're making up things. Let's just make it up. And so we created that idea. And the other thing we made a deal with, this is very important, is not to fight about money, not to hassle about it anymore. If we had the urge to fight about it, to sit down and work with our new mantra, that we enjoy plenty of money to do everything we want to do. And so we took that level of drama out of the situation. We occasionally would slip into it, but we caught ourselves pretty good about that. And we made such a transition within a year. Unbelievably, we had manifested our $1,000 in the most un-Cadian, gay-like way you could possibly imagine, given the kind of people we are. The US Army got hold of us and heard of what we were doing and hired us to do a seminar for some of their top brass. I mean, Katie and me doing a seminar for all these colonels and everything, it almost seemed like something you'd put in a movie, but nobody would believe it. But anyway, so we had all these crazy things happen. Oh, we got a book contract too, that Katie's movement genius. We said, why don't we write a whole book? And so that became the Moving Center, based on my series of centering books. That became the latest Moving Center. So all these things just sort of poofed. And I can't help but think it was because we got that basic aim to it and also created a way to make sure we didn't burn energy through fighting about it. So let's stop here and let me breathe for a moment or two, and you take a few deep breaths. We're talking about the Newtonian way of creating a positive, brand new thought or a picture that replaces an old story you had about the thing. So it doesn't go back and beat on that or anything, or make you feel bad about that, or do anything with it except create this new thing that's a better idea. And I guess the big punchline is the mind will always gravitate to a better idea if it has one that you keep serving up for it. Hey, this would be my pause for answering a couple of questions if anybody has any.
Go ahead and raise your hand if you have a question. Your electronic hand would be helpful. All right, then.
Hey, Gay.
Hey, Ben.
Really, I love these stories, and I'm getting a new layer of understanding with what you just shared, particularly around having made this commitment and agreement to end the hassles.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I heard in there that I'm really appreciating is how you came up with a better idea. And you said, we're going to not hassle about this stuff anymore. And anytime we're tempted to hassle about it, instead, we'll go work our mantra. And the thought that occurred to me was that's not just applicable to money. That's applicable to anything where you have more time. And I wonder if you have any other stories about a similar move that you might have done with something that wasn't money.
Yeah, like everything in my life, really. You know, I once, when I was in the thick of all this back in the 80s, when I was really just, you know, writing it down for the first time and testing it out with people and everything like that, I wrote down one New Year's, a list of 6 things that I wanted to accomplish that year. And then I promptly forgot about that. And one of them I happen to remember was I was trying to lose some weight at the time. And on the thing, it says, I enjoy weighing 186 pounds. I used to go to the gym every day, and I used to weigh myself every day when I'd finish working out. And so it was very easy for me to keep track of my weight every day. And for one reason or the other, I picked out the number 186 pounds. By the way, if you don't know me, I'm about 6 feet tall. I used to be 6'1", but gravity seems to be taking some of the slack out of my body in recent years. So I'm a 6-footer now. But I've always been, you know, kind of a big guy. I totally forgot about those 6 things. And then I was in the process of selling my old wooden desk, in the process of getting a new desk. And I was cleaning out the drawers, and I found a little piece of paper with my 6 things on it, all of which had come true during the year, even the 186 pounds, which was really astonishing to me. And so that became a problem later, because later I wanted to weigh 175 pounds, and I'd frozen in 186 pounds, and I would lose a pound or two and then go up to 187. And so I had to reconvince my mind that I could be even a little bit lighter. I really think, my biggest coup to date in the manifestation world happened 42 and a fraction years ago, when I came up with this wild idea of, I want to create a relationship with a total peer, somebody I'm totally in unity with, and we're fascinated by the same things, we work on the same stuff. There's no part of ourselves that's, you know, not unified. And at the same time, that creates complete creative freedom for each of us. So the freedom through the union, that I had that spark of an idea in December 1979. Wow, because I'd never had that idea. It was always freedom from getting away from union, you know, getting away from being annihilated. And yet it was all about my resistance to closeness, resistance to union. And so I had that spark, and the other sparks that came right on along with it was, oh, I waste a lot of time in my relationships not telling the truth, not speaking honestly about my feelings, and sometimes even lying about facts. What if I had a relationship where everybody told the truth? You know, both of us were committed to revealing rather than concealing. We wouldn't have any hassles, basically. Oh, what about that other thing I do? When I get stuck, I blame the other person. What if I created relationships where I took responsibility for the stuff that came up rather than, it's your fault, that doesn't have anything to do with me. That's your, you know, that whole drama.
What I'm hearing is a lot of instances where you applied that move of saying, I'm going to not hassle about this anymore. Instead, I'm going to commit to this vision. I'm hearing you describe a lot of instances where you did that in yourself. And what comes to mind is actually, it scrolled through the chat a minute ago, is the clearing up the fog section in the Radiance book, that chapter 7, where you talk about how important it is as you commit to these new visions to really face into the counter beliefs that we hold that will show up inevitably around us until we love and resolve them.
That is a really important thing, what you just said. Freeze frame that, everybody, because that's what we're going to be working on next in the Einsteinian, because the Einsteinian has a great deal to do with loving our restrictions and limitations and phobias and all that, rather than resisting them, opening our hearts to them. Before we get into that, though, let me do another hand or two if we have them. Thanks, Ben. Great question.
Okay, I just want to give one of the questions that went through the chat. Lore had asked, and you just spoke to this, but in case you want to say anything more, how important it is to recognize the old patterns first.
Yes. Well, they often go along together. Like in the Big Leap, I talk about how all these patterns that are like upper limits thoughts and upper limits behaviors, all of those patterns are rooted in fear. So to do our work, you have to really let go of the idea that you're a mind and a body, and that you'll be happier if you embrace that you're a body mind, and that the two are in union with each other. And a lot of our problems stem from trying to get out of union with our bodies, to try to resist our sexual feelings, or resist our anger, or resist our fear, or rise above our grief, forgive people, you know, all of those kind of things that involve going this direction rather than in a direction of wholeness.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Shabnan. Oh, did you want to take another question, Gay?
Might as well take one more.
Thank you. Hi. So I have like a teenager, or like, let's say with my husband, I'm manifesting with my teenager a more respectful interaction every time there's like a issue, or I'm manifesting more words of appreciation and gifts and romance from my husband. Do I go and tell him about my manifestation, or I just secretly write it down and say it to myself?
Well, here's a suggestion. How about do a little bit of both? Try a couple of weeks of no telling them, and then tell them and see what happens. Perform a little anthropological experience. Just pretend they're two monkeys that you're trying to learn how to communicate with. And so that's what I would suggest. That'd be a kind of an interesting way to do it. The other thing I would recommend that you do, however, coming into the Einsteinian discussion we're about to have, is go, how is my lack of respect for myself in some areas manifesting a lack of respect from the outside? Do that in a wondering state of consciousness. Don't do it in a blameful state of consciousness. Because that has power to change things, boom, very fast.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you all very much. Great questions. We'll try to do some more later on. Now I have one of my eye peepers on the clock here, and I see that we're trucking right along. So I want to work with the Einsteinian here for a moment, because the Einsteinian, the second of the three levels that I want to work on, is kind of follows the Newtonian, because as you get better at thinking positively and using creative affirmations and things to guide you toward what you want to be doing, setting intentions, that kind of thing. As you do that, you're going to come across things that don't work, areas that this stuff doesn't work in. And so your tendency will be to throw it out with the bathwater, so to speak, and not do it. But let me invite you to use it if you find areas that don't work, to use it to drop into the Einsteinian, because oftentimes when the Newtonian is not working or not working fast enough to suit you, then what happens is people kind of junk it and forget the process. But instead, drop into the Einsteinian. And here's how the Einsteinian works. There was a great quote of Einstein's about the theory of relativity. He was given the task of explaining theory of relativity to some 7th or 8th graders, I think. And he said, okay, it works like this. A minute sitting on a hot stove feels like an hour. But an hour with your girlfriend or boyfriend goes by like a minute. So think about why that's true. When you're with your beloved, your intention is to be wide open. You're in union. You want to be in as much union as possible. You want to make love. You want to celebrate being one. When you're sitting on a hot stove, all your cells are going in the opposite direction. They're contracting. They're not expanding into oneness. They're contracting into individuation. So we go through life in this quest for oneness, individuation. If we don't know any other way to individuate, fear is always one way, because we contract into the center of ourselves. But life is best appreciated, especially in relationship, as a process of expanding into unity and then having periods of individuation. Union, individuation, going through life in that process. And so in the Einsteinian way of approaching things, when you feel yourself contracting in fear or anger or sadness or confusion or whatever your contraction is all about, loving that contraction as it is, loving it and accepting it as it is, as part of the process, then makes the process speed up. Because the moment you quit resisting all those things that human beings typically resist, our fears and anxieties or our angers or our sadnesses, all those things that we tend to kind of keep frozen inside ourselves, that action of doing that takes us out of relationship with other people, that act of contraction. And suddenly then in that state of contraction, they start looking different. They start looking less trustworthy, or they start looking like they don't like you, but that act of contraction is the act that makes other people start looking like the enemy. So one of our big things in manifestation is to learn how to love the unlovable. to learn to love the unlovable, to finally face and accept and feel and love those things that we have often most judged most unlovable about ourselves. Things we've done, ways we've been, things we've done to other people, all of those kinds of things get stacked up in the storehouse of unacceptable, unlovable parts of ourselves. And then life gives you the opportunity to bring forth those things and deal with them. Usually what happens in life as a developmental issue is, one thing we say in developmental psychology is, in your 20s, you experiment. In your 30s, you find your life. In your 40s, you build your life. And in your 50s, you enjoy your life. I always say, hopefully you enjoy the whole process, but typically speaking, people are enjoying their lives more often in their 50s than they were in their 30s and 40s. And then, though, of course, we have the 60s and 70s and 80s, which are also have their other developmental tasks. The 50s are the process. Well, Erik Erikson said it best. He said, every moment after 50 is a choice between generativity or stagnation. Generativity was his word for expressing creativity. So in other words, he said, after 50, we're either expressing our creativity or we're stagnating. And you and I both know people probably who are doing just that. In your 60s, the drive is integrity versus incompletion. Integrity meaning, are there truths I haven't told? Are there commitments I haven't made, I've made but haven't followed through on? What can bring me into a state of integrity? And that really continues on into your 70s, where I am now, and probably into your 80s too. I'll give you a report when I get there. So right this moment, make this real for you in the following way. Think of something that you have in the past judged unlovable about yourself. Or maybe even you've been told that part of you is unlovable by a partner or something that was on his way out the door and said, I'm not coming back until you change X, Y, and Z. So just think about something in that unlovable realm that you've maybe struggled with changing. And right this moment, instead of all that, love it as much as you can from wherever you are right now. Just love it as much as you can. 10%, 20%, a whole big breath full. Just loving it as much as you can from wherever you are. That is the Einsteinian. And I discovered that the beauty of Einsteinian is that when it works, you have the actual experience of love and loving yourself, which is a very rare and beautiful thing. Second thing is it works fast. It doesn't take linear time. Things manifest very quickly when you use Einsteinian approaches. So the exact specific recommendation is, when you get stuck, instead of resisting it and doing more and more of what already isn't working, when you get stuck in relationship or feeling stuck in life, take a moment and take a few easy breaths and love it. Just love as much as you can from wherever you are. breathe with it. Accept it. Even appreciate it. Now that segues us right into this third approach, which I used to just call the third way. We started calling it quantum at a certain point. And I like quantum. Quantum, it fits very nicely with Newtonian, Einsteinian, quantum. So they're all physics concepts. So when you've done enough Newtonian, when you've had enough positive thinking to get yourself oriented into making some of your dreams come true, and when you've gotten good at loving the unlovable in yourself, then you knock on the door of the quantum field, which is, I will freely admit, very difficult to describe. The best I can do is to say it's a field in which there are no mistakes and things lead organically from one to the other, from one thing to the next. So my airplane story is a good example of the quantum field. Give you a 2-minute version of it. I'm rushing through Dallas Fort Worth Airport, huge airport, trying to catch my plane, which is at the other end of the airport, and it's going to Washington, and I've got a big meeting in Washington, and yada, yada, yada. And so my plane was late getting to Dallas Fort Worth. And so when I got off and I started chugging through the airport, getting on the trains and whatever, I saw on the message board that my plane was already boarding. And I still probably had 30 minutes to get there. And I found myself really stressing, pulling my wheelie down the road. And, you know, I was way out in front of my body. And I caught sight of myself in a mirror passing a shop. And I saw that I was like this, you know, instead of in a more centered, easygoing frame of mind. And I caught myself in that moment, just like you will have to catch yourself in similar moments. And instead of hurrying, I just went, I loved as much as I could from wherever I was. And I said, okay, I'm going to just do things at the pace that feels good. And so I had a good time walking on down. And finally, I get down to the podium and the door's already closed. And there's some guy at the podium having a temper tantrum. He's threatening to sue you. I have a first class ticket and you can't treat me this way. And I'm going to own United Airlines. He was just frothing at the mouth. And he went up the concourse, still kind of frustrated. And I stepped up in his place and I took a deep breath and said, wow, one of those days, huh, to the clerk. And just then the jetway door opened and one of the flight attendants came bustling up to the podium. And I hear the following conversation. We've miscounted. We have a seat left. So she looked up the concourse at that fellow who was storming up the concourse. And I could see this little tiny look pass over her eyes. And then she handed me my first class ticket. And moments later, I'm sitting there sipping my orange juice on my way to Washington. So that's the third way. That's the quantum. That's when you shift and make a quantum shift in the moment to this new way of being, which is being in the right place at the right time for the perfect thing to occur. So the quantum is being in the perfect place at the perfect time for the perfect thing to occur. Would you be willing to be so bold as a human being as to always be in the right place at the right time for the perfect thing to occur? I hope you get a gigantic rip-roaring yay or amen to that. If not, go work on that, because that is a beautiful way to live your life. I've personally lived in that space now for the past 20 or 30 years. It's great. Even the little things, you think of something that needs to be handled, and the next thing you know, you get a text from that person, and just things like that. It's part of the fabric of my life now. I don't even think about it anymore, but I just assume that I'm always going to be in the right place at the right time for the right thing to happen. So fortunately, it's not one of those things that you can practice like chin-ups, but just right this moment, declare it into being by saying, I'm willing to be in the right place at the right time for the perfect thing to happen. Just let that be a new, try it on way of being in your life. So by golly, I've actually done what I set out to do, which is to tell you everything I know about manifestation in 55 minutes. So let's open the floor for questions again.
All right, go ahead and raise your electronic hand if you have a question. And Abby, did you want to ask that question that you put in the chat? Yeah, okay. I'm going to go ahead and spotlight you.
Yeah. Hi, Gay.
Hi.
So my question is, I picked up on you said that when you and Katie were at the restaurant, you check with yourself whether there was resonance to say enough. So is there a body component when we're coming up with these phrases? That's my first part of the question. And the second part of the question is, does trauma get in the way of manifesting?
Let me answer the first one. The second one first, and that is clearly, yes, that oftentimes is the barrier that need to be overcome. The way I look at trauma is it's involves undigested and undealt with fear oftentimes. Sometimes there's a rage component with it. Sometimes there's a grief component, but there's always a fear component with it. So if you look at how the body's laid out, a lot of our anger machinery is in the upper part of our body, clenching jaws and that kind of thing. Whereas a lot of our sadness machinery is down in our chests and throat area. And a lot of our fear machinery is down in our belly region. And so oftentimes to go to the depth of a problem means going into the fear about whatever the situation is. And so upper limit problems are always caused by fear, and a great many of those fears are caused by residual effects of trauma. Now I've forgotten what the first question was. What was it again?
About resonance when we're coming up with statements and whether there's a body component.
Well, you can feel in your own body. Just check out the feeling of enough versus the feeling of plenty. They have a different feeling. Like if I was your boyfriend and I said to you, I'd like to give you enough love. Or if I said, I'd like to give you plenty of love, you'd probably like that one a lot better. Rather than saying, I'd like to, in our relationship, give you just enough love to get by on. It would have a whole different resonance in your body.
So for example, if I were to say something like, I always enjoy plenty of money, I notice there is an emotional and a physiological reaction, right? So is the job for me to then feel through anything that is arising until it's clear?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, use your breath with that too, because that's often the fastest way to clear things moving through your body. So think of the affirmation as a new entity that's never existed before. It's made of new particles. You created it. This idea of having plenty of money. And then the rest of your body has to get into harmony with that. And to do that, it has to shed fears and old glitches that was in its way.
Yeah. 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 Beautiful. Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
All right, Anne.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Hi. My internet is so bad. I keep being thrown out of the meeting. I just have a question about my mom. So I project she resents me often, not always, but it's just a lifelong like issue I have with her, and I just don't know what to do with her or what to do with it.
Mhm.
And she lives far away, but still we talk kind of often, and sometimes she's really nice, but then she never does anything bad. It's only her energy. So I don't have anything specific to tell her, because it's just that energy that I feel here, like a cord, and then I just always just feel like I want to get away, and like I have fear with however I feel when, like, she kind of scrutinizes me with her energy.
And
That's
when
what
you
it feels.
scan down deep into yourself, what do you think the thing is that you're most afraid of with your mother?
It feels like she had I'm afraid that she like grabs my heart, and like she feels better when I feel more she feels more powerful about her situation or something when I'm weaker.
Mm-hmm. So she has a vested interest in your pain.
I couldn't say that at all, because she's really nice. Like, she doesn't do anything bad. It's very complicated. But I do think she has feelings of resentment towards me.
Well, she
But-
wouldn't be the first mother by any means to be competitive with a child about that sort of thing. How old is your mother?
65, I think.
65,
Yeah. 67, actually, I think.
67. Uh-huh.
Mm.
And you've been playing out this drama for a long time.
I'm 39. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And so switch over to a different channel for me. Think of the energy that you put into this issue with your mother.
Think about the energy I put into it.
Yes, thinking about it, considering it, figuring out what to do about it. You put energy into it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then let me ask you a very sincere question. What could you be doing with that energy that would feed your genius? Instead of using your energy to grind an old situation that's never going to probably get any better, I have a feeling you use that issue to distract yourself from living in your genius.
I'm just reading that book, Big Leap. I have it here.
Yeah. Well, think
yeah.
about this point. How could you use that same energy and put it into things that would feed your genius rather than thinking about your mother and what she thinks? See, most people can't ever win an argument with their parent. Sally Kempton says, it's hard to fight an enemy that has outposts in your own head.
That's what?
That has outposts in your own head.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that they live within us. Every other cell in your body is a contribution of your mother. So when you get into a fight with mother energy, it causes all sorts of ruckus in your body. So I'm suggesting you discipline yourself to expressing your energy in your genius, to express it in things that contribute to your well-being.
Yeah.
Metaphorically, I'm getting a low battery sign on my computer. I got to plug it in. The juice is running out. I see it's 7:01 too, so we need to wrap things up.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, that's my general prescription, is to put that energy to work doing other things that don't have anything to do with your mother.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
Very good. Well, I'm going to call it a night there. I'm going to go spend the rest of our 100-degree weather cooling off, and lots of love to you. I hope you got value out of our conversation tonight. I love to talk about these things. So now you know everything I know about it. Go out and become the expert in your own life and be able to say in 20 years, I made all my dreams come true.
All right. Thank you so much, Gay.
Thanks, Gay.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Feel free to unmute and say goodbye. Thanks, Gay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Bye.
much, Gay. Thank you.
Thank you so,
Love you,
so
Gay.
Thank
much.
you.
So much.
Thank you,
Thank
Gabe.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
so much.